Good morning, boys and girls. Here to read you another story today. You might remember before we left school that we had read a book about Horton the elephant, written by Dr. Seuss. And this one is called Horton Hatches the Egg. I believe the one that we read before when we were in school was called Horton Hears a Who. And if you haven't had a chance to see the movie yet while you guys are home, that's a fun one to watch, Horton Hears a Who, and you'll recognize it from the story that we read. I know we really liked that one. So today's story is called Horton Hatches the Egg by Dr. Seuss, and you might remember me telling you that Horton is actually one of my all-time favorite story characters. I love everything that he stands for, and I think he's a really amazing character. So as I read, I want you to be thinking about words that you would use to describe Horton. A few really come to mind for me based on the last story that we read about him and now this one. Horton Hatches the Egg by Dr. Seuss. Sighed Maisie, a lazy bird hatching an egg. I'm tired, and I'm bored, and I've kinks in my leg from just sitting here day after day. It's work. How I hate it. I'd much rather play. I'd take a vacation, fly off for a rest. If I could find someone to stay on my nest. If I could find someone, I'd fly away free. Then Horton the elephant passed by her tree. "Hello," called the lazy bird, smiling her best. "You've nothing to do, and I do need to rest. Would you like to sit on the egg in my nest?" The elephant laughed. "Why, of all silly things, I haven't feathers and I haven't wings. Me on your egg? Why, that just doesn't make sense. Your egg is so small, ma'am, and I'm so immense." "Tut, tut," answered Maisie. "I know you're not small, but I'm sure you can do it, no trouble at all. Just sit on it softly, you're gentle and kind. Come, be a good fellow. I know you won't mind." "I can't," said the elephant. "Please," begged the bird. "I won't be gone long, sir, I give you my word. I'll hurry right back. Why, I'll never even be missed." Do you think Horton's going to do it? "Very well," said the elephant. "Since you insist. You want a vacation? Go fly off and take it. I'll sit on your egg, and I'll try not to break it. I'll stay and be faithful. I mean what I say." "Toodaloo," sang out Maisie, and fluttered away. The first thing to do," murmured Horton. "Let's see. The first thing to do is to prop up this tree and make it much stronger. That has to be done before I get on it. I must weigh a ton." Then carefully, tenderly, gently he crept up the trunk to the nest where the little egg slept. Then Horton the elephant smiled. "Now that's that." And he sat, and he sat, and he sat, and he sat. And he sat all that day, and he kept the egg warm, and he sat all that night through a terrible storm. It poured and it lightened, it thundered, it rumbled. "This isn't much fun," the poor elephant grumbled. "I wish she'd come back, 'cause I'm cold and I'm wet. I hope that Maisie bird doesn't forget." But Maisie, by this time, was far beyond reach, enjoying the sunshine way off in Palm Beach, and having such fun, such a wonderful rest. Decided she'd never go back to her nest. She being a very good mother to leave her nest like that. So Horton kept sitting there day after day, and soon it was autumn. The leaves blew away. And then came the winter, the snow and the sleet, and icicles hung from his trunk and his feet. But Horton kept sitting and said with a sneeze, "I'll stay on this egg and I won't let it freeze. I meant what I said and I said what I meant. An elephant's faithful 100%. I want you to think about that word faithful and what that means. I know in the last story we read about Horton, we all decided that we thought he was a very loyal elephant, and we learned the word loyal, and now they're using the word faithful to describe him. I wonder how many people would actually do this for somebody else's baby, to make somebody else's egg hatch. I don't know if I could or would. So poor Horton sat there the whole winter through. And then came the springtime with troubles anew. His friends gathered around and they shouted with glee, "Look, Horton the elephant's up in a tree." They taunted, they teased him, they yelled, "How absurd! Old Horton the elephant thinks he's a bird." So now he's being teased and made fun of for trying to help somebody else. They laughed and they all ran away. And Horton was lonely. He wanted to play. But he sat on the egg and he continued to say, "I meant what I said and I said what I meant. An elephant's faithful 100%. No matter what happens, this egg must be tended. But poor Horton's troubles were far, far from ended. For while Horton sat there so faithful, so kind, 3 hunters came sneaking up softly behind. He heard the men's footsteps. He turned with a start. 3 rifles were aiming right straight at his heart. Did he run? He did not. Horton stayed on that nest. He held his head high and he threw out his chest and he looked at the hunters as much as to say, "Shoot if you must, but I won't run away. I meant what I said and I said what I meant. An elephant's faithful 100%. But the men didn't shoot, much to Horton's surprise. They dropped their 3 guns and they stared with wide eyes. "Look!" they all shouted. "Can such a thing be? An elephant sitting on top of a tree? It's strange. It's amazing. It's wonderful. It's new. Don't shoot him. We'll catch him. That's just what we'll do. Let's take him alive. Why, he's terribly funny. We'll sell him back home to a circus for money." And you can hear the rain is pouring down in the middle of our story. Yikes. And the first thing he knew, they had built a big wagon with ropes on the front for the pullers to drag on. They dug up his tree and they pulled it aside, with Horton so sad that he practically cried. "We're off," the men shouted, and off they all went, with Horton unhappy 100%. Can you imagine going through all of this for somebody else who you don't even know? Does this remind you of the last story we read about Horton? Horton hears a who, when he did everything he could to help the Who's down in Whoville on that teeny little speck, when nobody believed him and people wanted to harm him. Sounds like something similar is happening to Horton again. Up out of the jungle, up into the sky, up over the mountains 10,000 feet high, Then down, down the mountains and down to the sea went the cart with the elephant, egg, nest, and tree. Then out of the wagon and onto a ship out over the ocean, and oh, what a trip, rolling and tossing and splashing with a spray. And Horton said day after day after day, I meant what I said, and I said what I meant. But oh, I am seasick, 100%. After bobbing around for 2 weeks like a cork, they landed at last in the town of New York. All ashore, the men shouted, and down with a lurch went Horton the elephant, still on his perch. Tied onto a board that could just scarcely hold him. Bump! Horton landed, and then the men sold him. Sold to a circus. Then week after week, they showed him to people at 10 cents a peek. They took him to Boston, to Kalamazoo, Chicago, Weehawken, and Washington too. To Dayton, Ohio, St. Paul, Minnesota, to Wichita, Kansas, to Drake, North Dakota. And everywhere thousands of folks flocked to see and laugh at the elephant up in a tree. Poor Horton grew sadder the farther he went, but he said as he sat in the hot, noisy tent, I meant what I said, and I said what I meant. An elephant's fateful, say it with me, 100%. Then one day, the circus show happened to reach a town way down south, not so far from Palm Beach. And dawdling along way up high in the sky, who of all people should chance to fly by? But that old good-for-nothing bird, Runaway Maisie, still on vacation and still just as lazy. And spying the flags in the tents just below, she sang out, "What fun! Why, I'll go to the show." Do you think she'll be surprised when she sees Horton there? And she swooped from the clouds through an open tent door. "Good gracious," gasped Maisie. "I've seen you before." Poor Horton looked up with his face white as chalk. He started to speak, but before he could talk, there rang out the noisiest, ear-splitting squeaks from the egg that he'd sat on for 51 weeks. Now, a year is 52 weeks, so almost a full year. A thumping, a bumping, a wild, alive scratching. "My egg!" shouted Horton. "My egg! Why, it's hatching!" "But it's mine!" screamed the bird when she heard the egg crack. The work was all done. Now she wanted it back. "It's my egg," she sputtered. "You stole it from me. Get off of my nest and get out of my tree." Poor Horton backed down with a sad, heavy heart. Is that the truth? Did he steal that from her? But at that very instant, the egg burst apart, and out of the pieces of red and white shell, from the egg that he'd sat on so long and so well, Horton the elephant saw something whiz. It had ears and a tail and a trunk just like his. Look at what hatched out of that egg. Was it a bird that looked like Maisie? And the people came shouting, "What's all this about?" They looked and they stared with their eyes popping out. And they cheered and they cheered and they cheered more and more. They'd never seen anything like it before. "My goodness, my gracious," they shouted. "My word! It's something brand new. It's an elephant bird." And it should be. It should be. It should be like that because Horton was faithful. He sat and he sat. He meant what he said, and he said what he meant. And they sent him home happy, 100%. So there's the story of Horton Hatches the Egg by Dr. Seuss. I hope you liked it as much as I do. I've already told you before that Horton is one of my favorite story characters. And from the last story that I read you, which was Horton Hears a Who, and now Horton Hatches the Egg, I think you might see why I like him so much. He's definitely an elephant who keeps his word. And if he says he's going to do something, if he tells you he will help you, no matter what, he makes sure that that happens and he will help you. So your assignment to go along with this story is this. I would like you to think of 5 adjectives, 5 describing words for Horton the elephant. And I would like you to write down those 5 words. And beside each word, I would like you to write your reason why you chose that word. So for example, if I chose the word faithful, it's kind of a big word, and it's okay if you don't know what that one means, but right next to the word faithful, I would write, I think Horton was faithful because he said he was going to do something, and even though it was really, 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 really hard to keep his word, he did. And so that's sort of me showing evidence from the story of why that word makes sense for me. Okay, so if you chose the word, let's say you chose the adjective kind. If you think Horton is a kind elephant, right beside the word kind, I would want you to write an example from the story that proved that he was a kind elephant. Or if you think he was mean or nasty, you could write that word as your adjective and then right beside it tell why, what evidence from the story made you think that. Okay, so 5 words on a piece of paper. Words to describe Horton. I hope you loved the story, and I can't wait to see pictures that your parents send me of your adjectives to describe Horton. I'll be checking those. Have a great day, everybody.